Meme Sebe Dejin Chere Se Chime Kembe Wongbo Temo Mali Zomze Sanwe Kanjin Tebe Zojin Zonga Losan Ta Sowande Banzen Sabe Lama Rembo Tazo Chiwara Benden Denjo Gaden Chenbe Gwane Jeso Guzon Toje Ngujo Zedo Banden Safe Lama Rembo Taso Ningara Benden Denjo La Gaden Jeso Chodan Temo Ngujo Zedo Banden Safe Lama Rembo Tazo Ningara Bende Desho La Gaden Changju Ningbe Ba Demba Anjo Masan Jeme Shera Maru Maje Manga Namge Ngo Sozo Rangli Yije Juyu Tuzon Shartse Lo Deya Tha Gaden Para Samga Bodhi Soha Deya Tha Gaden Para Bodhi Soha Deya Tha Gaden Para Bodhi Gere Tongda Jaju Shiwa Da Mide Nebe Jen Pezon Soju Ne Dashi Dele Jo Sa Shimbe Let me remind every one of ourselves to take a moment and cultivate bodhicitta motivation, seeking complete enlightenment for the benefit of all other sentient beings with that kind of at least contrived bodhicitta altruistic motivation, we should all participate in this discourse on Bodhisattva's perfection of wisdom gone beyond.
Da shunzum dirige da sayad men linje de tek marse de makyare kya
Kawaki.
la da sayad royi de da paka ro
No.
ta royi de da kan da te me khugor ko da te me je so no ene thaba to ya de legi na ja tek marse ja mar
I don't know so.
di shada
So just to recapitulate where we will pick it up from this, guide. So according to Vaisheshikas, if there is no intrinsic self, intrinsically existent self, then they feel that self could not exist at all, and there is no basis for going round and round in samsara, or there is no basis to achieve liberation from samsara. And in which case, there is no basis for the law of karmic actions and results to function. And how could it be? So that's what the Vaisheshikas are telling Prasangika Madhyamikans.
there's somebody da men leje me de tewa bo da men ninje ko ba so me de tewa bo tangbo ne kede da so kang ba ni shu de de la sho nga me zhe ba ne kede xing zhe ji xir ji be da ne da ba shi ye ba me ne da kam ka sa ge ji ge chen ga she ba ye ji jor la Tibetan jud yemegeli jibu dedu nyoma shu jure gijawa joma rigba mende le shiba bu gemege le shine shige kiji nipa shiba bu gasimbi shiba bu da shibe na shin le di shiba bu se le jordis jibu nyungde na le shiba bu shin mebe shir ye da na da ba ye ba debe se lenje jo shi te de she na di lenji ne jule so bi shawashi bi shi se di pu bo la ta ba se di pu bo la ta bi kaza da Jibu lojebe hi chime pumula tabi kaza ni ngaji tate wada lende la lojebe chime tuider ngame tui da kaza le saba shiva po meba yang yugucha jiga chube dirche yida taba mena lende ji dewa mide chi sewa tomi mayinam te yinos odi khaje da rashi de da se me da ta ba me na chi da ko da me ina in lesan yendo be de du le de na ja se ta ba da tab ji ja se ke shi long do ne ga ga me sha ru ro ha ji se da
No, so.
se de sha ru de se de kaza china ki karasa da be se de le sange kaza de shindu de pa ga de ngaso ga de na re me re ro was
No.
de se da se de da me de bi sha shi ba yu ju ge da me sha de se da ju yu ge da le sange ka sha de se da ni lang do ni da ji te gu du da cosa da shi dimado dero da cosa da ba che le go giuze dero ko le so che giù go in de 딱봐 메나 le soge ti riu ka sha so in le de shol do so.
So those of you who or have the same English translation of the guide by Stephen Batchelor's published by the Tibetan Library in India, we are on page 157 and stanzas 70, 70 and 71 go together. That's what Geshe read. So as Geshe explained, according to Vaisheshikas or reductionists, Chitaba in Tibetan, they feel that there has to be intrinsic self, intrinsically existent self, and that self has to be permanent, right, unchangeable. Okay, and so if such a self does not exist, then they feel that we really don't have any basis to talk about the law of karmic actions and results, and we don't have any basis to talk about how we go through feelings of pleasure and displeasure as a result of our actions. He said, so everything becomes implausible, right, if the self is not permanent, because there has to be self that exists, right, because they also assert that a person who does the action is responsible for their outcomes, and the same person must kind of enjoy the fruits of the action or pay the penalty, so to speak, right? So if the self is not permanent, that does not work out, and so that is their thinking there, and in which case then that's whole practice of abandonment and cultivation has no ground to stand, isn't it? Like when we talk about abandoning negativities, adopting positive action, and you will experience the results of your karmic actions. She said all of these things will not make any sense if there isn't a self that is permanent, right? Because they know that when a person does whatever karmic actions in this life, when he dies, well, that person is gone, isn't it? Then he says, if there's no permanent self, then who experiences in the next life the good and bad results of all these actions? This is not making any sense. So that's why they feel that self has to be permanent. Okay.
Oh, dear, go. Jundo신 삼자디 하모고자 이거 게 미다에도 고 메오레도 자미로 소리시든 레상게데 리비뇽게 자메 레상게 리비뇽 리비뇽게 레마사서 에는 제미 주젤라가 메데서 쇼고라 또 그런 상황도 혹시도 디서는 고제 게지게 주시 건조시나 게지가 가르고 무슨 고 유엔되는 가르고 말어
No.
No.
So the whole debate, pertaining to this topic between Vaisheshikas, reductionists, and Prasangika Madhyamikans, is really kind of embedded in these notions where in the Vaisheshikas, if something is impermanent, right? Then when it goes changes, for them change means destruction, right? Annihilation, right? And so if self is permanent, then if it changes, it destroyed, then who experiences the result of the actions, right, that was done before. So this is not feasible at all. And if that's the case, then they said the whole ground for the law of causality becomes implausible. That's not going to work at all. But in our system, right, what we say is that things undergo momentary changes or momentary disintegration, mithaba, right? That every moment is not the same as any other moment, but there is a continuity maintained through these momentary changes, isn't it? And so this is why on the basis of that continuum, right, that all the law of karma and actions result. But for them, right, change means, impermanence means complete destruction. So they're not able to, right, assert the continuity of something that undergoes momentary changes, right? So that's why the whole debate goes between two schools of thought here. Yes.
어디에 그 소모도 계시게 준도서야지. 누지 계시면서야지 샤마신사 어디 샤고로.
No, sir.
계시게 조르고 뒤에 로로 뭐 랑사 대하고도 그 렌제 되더라.
No.
제가 계시게 준도서 계시면서 준이 샤모다 레상게 매주도 삼민도 주변 용게 가가 줘서 된 렌제 남자가 잘 되고 말아. 그런 상황도 어디 샤고로.
So as Geshe explained that, if they're able to understand that, there are many moments, right? They keep changing from moment to moment, but yet, across these moments, there's something that is continuous, isn't it? Continuity. If they can understand that, then they will have no problem, right? Asserting that although things do change momentarily, based upon the continuity of momentary changes of things, we could still assert the law of karmic actions and results. Now, they are not able to do that. They have a difficulty asserting momentary changes. If something changes, momentary, whatever, for them it means destruction, annihilation, right? So if the self is momentary or change, then self is destroyed. Then who is responsible for all the actions that he or she does here? Because when you die, you are destroyed, right? Then who is accountable for those outcomes? That's the difficulty they have.
어디를 다른 데로 그 계시게 준도시를 뭐 이제 배짱매로 줘요 뭐라고 세제 부분 로직 부분 로자비스 되는 이 준도 주고 뒤에 부분 그 마셔도 뉴런자 되게 어디 지금까지 주고 그래서 계시게 돼 샤브다 계시게 줘서다 내 계시게 뭐 삼자 뒤에 남샤면서 그 메다베도 그 제가 레상게다 주주가 가가시 되는게 지금서 그는 노사도 어디 계시게 뭐 지네 유된 주마로 계시게 주도서야 돼 하고서 어디를 시대네 인디 저바디 용과 기준 되셔서 메다 계시게 주도 남외미지 치료도 계시게 주도서야 кел린 거에서 바로 그 매우도 다 잠이셔서
I think the challenge they find is to accept the notion of momentary changes, right? They are not able to assert that. For them, impermanence means change. Change means complete perish or vanish or get destroyed. That's why. So they are struggling to understand, right? How could something, be impermanent and yet it exists, right? But in our schools of thought, as we say, impermanent does not equal to complete destruction, right? It may, but impermanence means momentary changes, right? An example Geshe has given, if a baby is born today, let's say he is going to live 80 years old, right? But then as the baby goes through the life, every moment the baby is undergoing change, right? But there's a continuity maintained until he reaches 80 years old. Yeah? So many changes are taking place in his life, but there's a continuity. So then we can say, right, that child is responsible for the actions he undertakes, the consequences of those actions, right? So now they are not able to kind of assert, understand that kind of a concept there.
No, this is it. Said the take go to Tessie, Geshe you are shaman. That Geshe Judra, the Zamida, the Tonshana, in the court, Joshua, the Data, Lula, Geshe Joy, Mother, your joy, your is what they shall go, they shall. Says the Jew loser with Cosa, less hungry, check my body, and the general killing was killing us. Because less hungry the mail, do you? Less have you get that mail, she said the less hungry the driven you can start over that getting some say the getting journey my duty at Shama. Any less hungry that driven you can start over. Didn't lazy thing were other.
Not in.
Choosing lazy is lazy you when I start over.
So the difference between the two schools of thought, Vaisheshikars do accept the concept of impermanence, but for them impermanence means complete destruction, annihilation, right? They are not able to posit momentary disintegration changes as impermanence. Whereas in the Prasangika Madhyamika schools, impermanence means momentary changes, but along these momentary changes, we could also posit continuity of these changes, right? So that's the big difference between the two schools of thought, both schools assert, right, that the doer of the action is, not necessarily the experiencer of the results of the actions, right? One person does something, then he or she dies, right? And let's say the action is going to ripen next life, will be reborn. And that other person, right, is not exactly the same as the previous one, right? They both accept that. Otherwise, we say that these two individuals are totally different individuals, right? They have nothing to do with. It's almost like the famous names we use in Tibetan Buddhist is Gaden and Chöjin. Well, these are the names of the people, right? So let's make it Tenzin and John or something, right? If Tenzin does some action, right, John is not going to experience the results of Tenzin's actions or vice versa, because we have nothing to do with each other. We're two different people. We are responsible for our own actions, isn't it? It would be like that. But that's not the case, right? The doer of the action, the agent of the action will experience the results of his or her actions, and both accept that notion. But now the basis upon which this is asserted, so they have a difference. Vaisheshika says there's a permanent person or a self, right? Self, and whereas the Prasangika says that self is simply asserted, imputed onto the continuum of all this, right? Things changing momentarily.
Sami teme lo dabe mama sha na yira odi so to dishe ade che ge se ka shena de le ne ju le so be shawashi be hide shi se di pumbol dabe se ka sa da ju lu che be shi me pumbol dabe ka sa ni Bodhisattva le la longshebe shime tude ngame tude tuge da ko khansa le sobo shibo bo mewa ya ubu chaje ka tuno de chobe deje gida da ba mena leje ji jewa medeje sewa thome ba yino de mayina de yinde yindo so de da the church of God was swimming this. And that day, less over the driven you about it. Getting a Joashi was a mother, and less over about the Bible driven you as laws, less over about the driven you and Kawachaya Maris. The good unit of the Mangashi doors, the DJ in the church of the data women, they did take him to see at any Tomere. Tell you data go money. Could you guys do it? You guys did do it in the big show. No, yeah, maybe never the windows. What this is it?
So, pertaining to stanza 71, as Krishna read from the commentary in text, that Prasangika Madhyamikans are telling Vaisheshikas that you are really not following the argument here that we are making. Because in your mind, impermanence means if any change means complete non-existence, it's destruction. Okay? But we don't necessarily mean that, right? Impermanence means momentary changes or disintegration, but it's possible to have a continuity of momentary changes. And so we are not saying that two different peoples, right, unrelated people are there, like the one who does the action never experiences the results of his actions, but the one who experiences the results of the action has never done the action. We're not saying that, right? this whole, your assertion about permanent self is untenable from our point of view. Yes, we agree there has to be basis, right, for the law of causation or karmic action results to function, but that could be maintained on the continuity of a self, although the self undergoes momentary disintegration, changes. Self undergoing momentary changes doesn't mean self is becoming non-existent, right? And so on the basis of that continuity, so we say that the one who does the action will also experience the results of the actions. So that's what the Prasangikas are telling Vaisheshikas. Prasangikas are telling Vaisheshikas that we both agree that in terms of law of causality, cause and effect has a sequential order, isn't it? Right? They don't exist at the same time, right? We know that you perform an action and that action has a consequences sequentially, right? We both agree with that, And but you assert that the person has to be permanent to be able to experience the result of his action, the action done before, previously, isn't it? But they said, then how does it work? The one who experiences the result does not exist at the time when the person is performing the action cause, isn't it? When the person experiences the result, the one who did the action is no more there, right? This is sequential. You assert that. So that doesn't seem to work. But what we are saying is this works for us because on the basis of continuum of momentary changes, we say that the one who does the action, right, undergoes momentary changes. It doesn't mean becoming non-existent, but sequentially he or she experiences the result of his or her actions. Right? Yeah.
What this is that person that did the Tongju Yongju Leda, Generation Leration Yule, Ginshagara. The Tongju Yongju said, you said there was a river said in Tongju Yongju, Sejalia, you didn't get to Sejal Trotter, Tongju Yongju Les.
No, so.
That Leration you citizen, you said there is a that did you check your Chiman of New Adel, Jenny Yongju says, or this year or that. 통주 용지 레나라 세들 요아디 그 레사베 내가 더랑 에니고 능어디 요고 말하고 거기서 그런 꿈마스 구에나 꿈마고라고 그 능어리 말하고 꿈마고 에니고 그도 에니체 거디 리뷰 요고 뭐지 그 꿈마고 내가 그디 에니 꿈마고 예와 그 주민고 말하고
나네
다다가 이 소리 레비아가 사나다 도에서 거기서 this 내가 될 미에도 통주 용지 레나라 디사번 내가 아니 교도 리뷰 냠도 문도 왔어. 이거 토고 토아메자 이제 유진이 뒤님 요 말이지. 뒤님에 이제 교도 리뷰에 교사들도 리뷰를 요하디 요 말이지.
So Prasangika Madhyamikans are telling Vaisheshikas that in terms of how karmic actions produce results, we can think in three different ways or situations. There's something called Tongje Nyongjur, right? which is a case that you perform certain actions and then you experience the result of those actions in this lifetime. That means you are witness to what you did and what you experience. Isn't it? You don't have to wait for next life. Yeah. So even here, it is sequential, isn't it? You know, the results follow the action. They don't exist at the same time, you know. And then we have actions which are done this life, but the results are experienced in the next life. That's Tien and Yongyur, right? Those actions only result come in the next rebirth. Then we have actions whose results will ripen in many other lifetimes, right? So whichever way you look at that, in terms of cause and effect, it's a sequential time, it's a time difference, right? Cause and effect, particular cause and effect do not coexist together, right? So when you're performing the action, let's say example Geshe gives is if somebody likes to steal something, while he's stealing something, he's not getting into any trouble, right? I mean, he's just, but then he get caught, and now he get punished or put behind a bar. That comes later, isn't it? Because those two things don't coexist there.
Le shiba bo tingi jibu lung shiba bo ino she kunza zangdi tenjawe tanyi sharungwa me tenji si chuen deba tara kongsa takpa mo rangshin chi chuwa dini shindi powa me la le dang le yin jibu kewa gyayang chu sawa minjuwa dini chashin toba kawe se tamji chenpa kone choyu du jowa des dengi zi jevo le se kini jik den paru jowa ye simchen shi le jewa mik jang mimik jewa mimik jang lena shiva meba minjute kana shi shin jibu mimba shi rikpe tsuyu de tsuyu ju godu sangpo de 차기 통과 제외 주의 예수의 시로 예수의 시로 제대 나시 부부 주의되어 강사제 다시자도 세네 대다다바 이제 강사의 생시 손에 때문에 매노 너나 다마다 마다 마제 버스 강사 딜레드 시스 드부드 용시와 자 대제 레소버보드 드부 용보 강사 타제 딱도 제니 미니데 케디티제네 다시 풍부 세네 심섬 남시다우시 다고 강사도 조고는 데어도 모파이 심제 셈네 다메데 테니 시고던 마제베시 다드메시 원디 켈 망가페 베 심다다와 다이네 냠네 계지 이पर 시바 나야 런신제 가베시 다데미드 조에는 메테 다 마이노 대다 심소 다시 구에네 세는 미바디 pen 슈신기 동보다 심바소 샤기소서 셰나 닝보죠 가야 메바 디신드 다유 전에 라시 주바 조모조기 리베 넘버 제바 예 제나 다자 양다바 주바 나야 니바 멤버니 다 주베 리베 주비 다메 주베 리베 주비 쉐로스 니는 regwati 네베시로스 어때 다 가제 다스야 이거는 유나는 그 부부가 요걸 부부다 부부가 여러
No.
어때 부부가 레레데 마이 소바 마이 부부가 제다 마이 다디 마이 제는 ane pumbanga yo na da kasa chigi na da chigi ma pumbanga wo chigi ba da yo thuma ina pumbanga thuma yo da pumbanga chigi da kasa thuma yo de cha chi se da chigi thuma si se da tani ga ga ti ma se da ti da se ti to ba da sun sha go ma da ji bi da hi ze da sun shi ni wa yo ma ri o ti yo no de ji de ji wo ri si wa da yo ma da ma bo 풍부가 요나시 다가 여러분 다 지금 몇도 배우는 풍부 지금 유명해 어디서
So I noticed that Geshe read from the commentary, and the stanzas he read cover are 71 to 74, and he started to explain and that so Prasangika Madhyamikans are telling Vaisheshikars that if you assert an intrinsic permanent self, that it has to be findable somewhere, isn't it? And possibly it should be findable, right, among the aggregates, right, aggregates of the self. Now, if you analyze every aggregate, right, the 5 aggregates or the skandhas, right, from the form to the form, feeling, all of that, the 5 aggregates, we are not able to pinpoint anything as that intrinsic permanent self. So it's unfindable. And but if we still insist that self is one with, identical with these aggregates, then we have to say that just as the self is one entity, right, one phenomenon, all these 5 aggregates must become just one phenomenon. Okay? Or just as there are 5 aggregates, the self has to be 5. Amen. So it is one with, or right, so if you analyze it, we are not able to find the self, in any of the 5 aggregates, not in the collectivity of the 5, not in the individual aggregates, right? It's not findable. So what that says is, it's an imputed self. The imputed self cannot be found, right? Exists in any of the collectivity or the individual aggregates. No.
어디서 다들 추징 인양실에서 님보 추징사에 가서 길에도 너무 들에서도 와 길에도 너무 거기 빠빠모도 너로 착사를 제요 행동 시대에는 실 빠빠이 너로 님보를 착부지요 제 길에도 빠빠 가지고 그런 빠빠 걸어모도 너로 약간 시기 너도如果 요모도
So the example given to demonstrate this whole analysis is the chushing, which is translated as the plantain tree, or Geshe says it's the banana tree. Now the banana tree, if you cut it open and split it off, inside there is nothing that is very hardcore banana. Many trees, right, you take the barks out, something is there, right? But in the banana tree, it's like a tree has no essence, nothing to be found. So like that, if we analyze the collectivity of the skandhas, psychosomatic aggregates, or every one of them, we are not able to find it. So it means it's simply imputed onto them. So imputed self, cannot be found in any of them.
봄바다 양문 타디 양문에 봄바 지금 요새 가가 들이 줘라 리바 세다 가자 나디에는 풍부 지 양문 타디 이 세다 지기나 아니 가서 풍부 가자 지금 뭐는 풍부 지 차그리시요 나 타디는 풍부가 요는 가사가 샤르지 세다 거기 풍부 지 다시에 가사 지 겨져 풍부가 다 가서 민족의 배자 풍부가 요라 숙제 가사의 풍부가 다 가지. 숙매 가서 풍부가 막 숙제 가서 풍부가 예자. 제가 그 porque lleva de si que yusa de kho yers de yugo sa de be de mer ba da
No, de.
pero ngas cha la de si na
No.
tong kho la no di sa de de ze ge mi cha la de la de sa de che da ze ne ko nya ya ba
That's
no
right.
this what is wrong
No.
ko yene kho pu pu de yugo is what is wrong.
So this reasoning of oneness and difference, or translated as singularity and plurality, or one and many, how wonderful we are in English translation. In Tibetan, it's just one, chik and thadeb. Is a very important reasoning for analysis. And so which means that if something is one, right, or singular, right, or something if exists, it has to be one, or it has to be multiple, many. That's the issue. In the case of a vase, a pot, right? Does it exist as one or it exists as many? And then we analyze: is the pot one with its basis, right? Base of the pot, or is different from the basis? Different means many, right? Diversity there. And so like that, we also analyze that if the self exists, it has to be either exist as one with, identical with the aggregates, the basis of the self, or it has to exist as different from the basis of the aggregates. Those are the only two possibilities. There's no option number 3 somewhere there. And so when we look into every one of those two possibilities, we got a problem. If the self is identical one with the aggregates, so self is one, but aggregates are many. Now you have to say that all the aggregates are just one. You're not going to say that, isn't it? But if you say that self is different from the aggregate, it's many, then that means there has to be many selves, right? Self-associated, self different from the form, different from the feeling, and that's not working either, and so that's how this analysis is done. And as Geshe says that, most of the beings have 5 aggregates. Like formless realm does not have 5 aggregates. We know that, right? But we humans do. And so if self exists, we have to look into places where they should be findable, isn't it? We are not going to look everywhere, right? Irrelevant place. So the 5 aggregates as the basis of the I of the self is the right location to look for them. So does it exist in the collectivity of the aggregates? Does it exist as individual, right? So when we couldn't find it, that means such a self, right, does not exist. And the example Geshe gave me says, if you if you lost something, you might have an idea where you might have lost it. So you're going to look in that place. You're not going to go to some total different part of the world to find your place, because that makes no sense. Wherever you thought locations you lost it, that's where you're going to look, right?
Nibbon kesa simje rangshi yi chiba yuwa mina simje mewa jo deta na yingshe yimi mewe shir sula yingshe goma shashi na simje rangshi mewe yingshe mimi mewa yi kalan jo de wana kalan mekshe na zochang jibi tongdu simje la yingshe goma tang lamla lawa so ke langwe tongla che na di takdong zayni yuwa mayi pa maje ba mombe taba kaan yinbe se simse tanyi zade yewa tila wo mongba shewa yuwa le se mata chaba temu le yino xie songba tanga daye lo tanyi ba zam yinla tila mongba tanga temu shewa ne dame la loka masobe jide ranga loza mibe soos hotere karsa ma kar desigdo kamba jungi di karde songa digda in simje raje be ninje shemo gomya da shonju se jaga me shakrise in di ninje shemo da shonju se namja di leji de namja di ga kunzo maje mata ba shagor ma 당소 쟤는 되게 샤제요 말이지. 당소 쟤는 샤다 천원 뒤져야 되가 당소 쟤는 샤거리지. 당소 쟤는 쇼가 샤가 말이지. 다들 자지 나비야 강가 마다 마제와. 아이다 가서 샤거리지 가서 마다 잡아 때문에 노세야 저러 죽어가 뒤다기 마다 잡았을 때 the Linda, the Navasha, the Ganga, Tonta, request Jabashin, direction Shao Maris.
No, so.
Could you did the Kaka be able to do the tiny use Ganga Tumo, the Sharis. But then the Javaji Jogo Maris.
No, so.
She the Mata Java Tebule in the Siati, Karisena, that this was called Dame Law was Chitang Simji on the cinema Shah in the Mata Java Tebule, so this is.
No, so. So Gisela read stanza 75 and commentary from the commentary and explained, which is now the Vaisheshikars are saying that if sentient beings are not intrinsically existent, Rangshinjituba in Tibetan, then you would not have, object for developing compassion. With me? So your compassion will have no focus or object. Sentient beings must exist intrinsically. Otherwise, how can you generate compassion, right? And by the extension of the logic, we can say, how can you generate bodhicitta, right? Who are you generating it for if sentient beings are not intrinsically existent? That's their right standpoint. And so Prasangikas are saying, responding to that, when we talk about sentient beings, something exists conventionally, right? All of these things are not established through kind of a analysis that we are doing here, right? They are just accepted as the world accepts them, right? When it comes to conventional reality, Kunzop Demba, conventional truth, some with it satya, deceptive truth, right? Nobody goes through the ultimate kind of analysis, and then you say, okay, is there something findable, and now we're going to label it. Does that make sense? Everything is just talk like the world talks about it, so whatever is commonly accepted by the world, that's what we talk about, right? When we talk about law of karmic action and the results, it's commonly accepted, right? It's not put through the ultimate kind of analysis here. So this is posited from the point of view of beings, who do not necessarily have, any thought about selflessness, right? Idea at all. You don't have to have it. Just Whereas whatever you are asserting it right on the basis of some kind of ultimate analysis. Something has to be findable, and then we point to that and say this is what it is, right? And so that's a different kind of analysis, isn't it? Conventional reality or truth have never been established through that kind of analysis. So that's what the Prasangikas are telling the Vaisheshikars.
The tiny thing of that was in Jomar said, in young Simji Rashi, Mena, Jibu Doja, the Kaza, sweet top in the top of Kaza, maybe she can. That the Chiba can lend him Sanji Midas and the Kaji, London Karshi, the Masana, and the Kaza Rashi, the Timan to say the road. Jibu Doja, the Kaza, sweet top in the top Jabo Kaza, maybe she can. Told about top Jatoji, the Tongi Kaza, maybe then she told no the Dunetanis. Was a told about Topja Toji maybe good, the tiny Gunzos of this, Majaba Jube, Lomomba Tiny Bay, Tazi Lady, Topja Toji Yoba Dogi Sheros, what he said, did tell about Lady and Jasanada, what curtail of Gagal, Gunzos some said, tell them around. Didier Ranga will tell you in the Shago. Thousand Jelly has Jayomaris. The thousand Jelly had not Jayomari, Ganga, top 1,000 mothers, the 1,000 Yamara. Said the Gonzo Jidig Shashi Kawashavati, Madame Mashi Shavakitari, she the Tisaza, any Karsa Rashi Mother that Tanya lawyer will hear in the Tagaran degrees. Till you go show this, or this is it.
So the next stanza is 76. Basically, the argument is the same here. Earlier, Vaisheshika said, if sentient beings don't exist intrinsically, then who are you developing compassion for, right? And Prasangika Madhyamika says that sentient beings, law of cause and effect, compassion, all of these things are asserted conventionally, right, as deceptive truth, samvritti satya, not through some kind of ultimate analysis, right? This is how the world knows, and that's what it is. So you develop compassion for, right, conventionally existent sentient beings. So now the follow-up question is, again, based upon their own assumption that, if you develop compassion, who is going to experience the result of that compassion? So it doesn't matter whatever question they're asking, their premise is the same thing. Even if they say, well, if things don't exist intrinsically, how can there be a Buddha? They can say the same thing, right? It's the same premise upon which they can ask that question. And so Prasangikas are clarifying to them that all the things that exist conventionally are established, just the world accepts them, isn't it? They are not established through some kind of ultimate analysis that you are doing it here, because our position is that everything is merely imputed by terms and concepts, in Tibetan, right? But if you look for what is merely imputed, nothing is findable. That's the same with all existence, and we are not asserting phenomena from that point of view, right? That's ultimate analysis we're dealing with. We are talking about conventional reality. So you develop compassion for sentient beings who exist conventionally and who will experience the result of compassion and karmic actions like conventionally as is asserted by the world, not through ultimate analysis. Because from ultimate analysis we say that nothing is findable, right? Everything imputed, if you say, okay, show that to me, there's nothing to be found. No.
Mumbai Shaba Tarje, Tarji Namsha Dida, Satina, Mumba Yud Java, Gazes in the cover mine and Kanzar Dungi, Yoshi, Tondi, so driven to the Nishagoba, so they made Cheva the Mashi base. But Simpsons are making Majiva, Jubo Mobile Law, Tanyeva Tender, Numujin, my base. Dunga Ju Mishipe, Mr. Marse, Zozo Toji, Tagi, Yala, Chevaji, Misheris, Doa Misha was. Oh, dear, the Nishabe, Tony Mazo, Kaza, Pevaji, Nisha, the Karas, there in the Dunga Jishio, Shigmaris, the Dunga Jimisha, Maze, Zozo Jishiori, Shada, Tony Mazo, Jibe, Shansu, Nisha, Ganabe. Karsa, Zozan Juris, and the Tanya the Shavis, or to get the Jishumaris, or this is it.
That is again the Mumbai Shaba said the Karso.
Mumbai said the Tissue
Tanzimari Mumbai.
to go. Tony Mazo Kasa to do Mumbai Shah said Tony Mazo is a deep monster, but Mumbai Marbaris is just as a Maris.
Ale Tony Mado.
Mumbai says, go to Jide, Braga, Jide, Lord, the Shah, what is your What is it?
Because there's a term that appears, I think, here in my translation has been translated as I'm looking at the answer part of stanza 76. Let me read it. Although ultimately it is true there are no truly existent sentient beings, compassion or results, deceptively from the point of view of a mind confused about phenomena, right? The Tibetan word is Mongbe Shaba, which means literally, if I translate, it is posited from ignorance perspective kind of thing. So I ask, what does it really mean, right? And what it means is conventional realities are posited from ordinary perception point of view, right? And so ordinary mind does not necessarily, right, seize the emptiness or deal with it. That's what it means, right? It doesn't mean that ordinary minds are ignorant about everything, right? So that's the meaning of that perspective. And so Prasangika Madhyamikans are telling Vaisheshikas that we say conventionally, the Tibetan word is Phuntsok. Of course, sometimes we can translate deceptively. Somehow the deceptive is not working in my translation here, so I stick to the word conventional. So conventionally, compassion exists, sentient beings exist, right? And these are all posited by the mind. Ignorant perspective means ordinary point of view, not through some ultimate findability analysis that you are doing it. Okay?
So mama didn't double Shartse, and do you know the Ninja chances the Dorjee Gumja Sanji you do Yaboris? And then Dorjee the Kaponja the Karisena, and the dad the Dagins was said, and show the Hazak, the Zimari Bindi, Oponja of the Terrace, the Yin call, they didn't do Koya, the Dunga Ganga, 10 young years. They go the Karagars and shake does it the Kazak does in the Gagos. That they tell you, Tavas the Tawalaya, and the Tony dogs, you so the Dami the mother Tavata. They go out the Tavata gig of Karisana, shake does it the Kazak does it. And they teach them in Yamuz.
No, so this pertains to stanza 77, and so Prasangika Madhyamikans are telling Vaisheshikas that compassion, law of cause and effect, etc., are posited from ordinary perception point of view, right, which are impacted by ignorance, but these are not an object of abandonment. Compassion is not an object of abandonment. It has to be adopted, cultivated, isn't it? Yeah? So in the case of what needs to be abandoned, object abandonment are the graspings at self of a person or self of phenomena. Yeah. And then all other delusions which arise from these graspings, right? These are the objects of abandonment, because all of these things keep us in samsara, and if we wonder why we are stuck in samsara and couldn't get out of samsara, the obstacles that traps are the grasping at the self of a person and grasping the self of phenomena and all other delusions popping up, right, from them. So those need to be abandoned, and Prasangika Madhyamikans assert that in order to uproot them, that one must realize emptiness. Remember, that's their contention. To achieve nirvana, enlightenment, one must realize emptiness, right? Only emptiness realization can uproot the grasping. That's Prasangika Madhyamikans' standpoint.
What did that could cause our coaching that trade and the Kansa does it is a 2 degrees. Timon I guess the hours and I guess you never get the Shannon degrees. That motion tone and how Yamagil Lam Najilam Nazil Kansa dad in Zembe till he saw so. Tell a moment Nama till legend. That is a moment in it. Tommy Jula Shuba Jason Kumshivis do the minus Shena didn't do need the Indian Mubunelu change load Shube Zinda James Top Choking Mera Dame Gomane. You know, she's a mother, sugar, the dancing base. Chiku Zani, Chongji, Nimbe, Top Down, Demba, be so you know. Tinatin, big bachelor, maintenance, the don't forget sugar in here. The men, cemetery, the double Javden Samayola. 당지 소다지 힘이라니 세메되베 싫어. 되나? 강한다 세마다 되버디 지큐 수제베 싫어. 되라 뉴이디 조데 되데 강한 세마요. 되네 되라 뉴시 조 쉐바타 로스. 되다네 당지세야 되베 힘 공등이 되레스. 제가 힘이 되네. 다 지금 공대를 시다 다 뭐들 시다 공대를 디시드 다음에도 거봐도 당신 거봐님 거기 축증 되신다 당신 거봐도 통화면 그 축도 취하야라 너 조금 말하면은 대책이 로 영다 말이지 세 말이지 다음에도 로 세마시 당신 로 시지로시 어디서다 그 힘을 리베드바에는 아니 그 시지로서도 그 도라야레스 그 지다 유디 요게 그 세마서도 그 유기 내고 로바쇼메도 그 도라야 말이 세다 그 고바시야 되고 당시 고바시 그러지나 그 로시지로도 뭐 저리야 잡대 세마여다 잡대 세마메고 디레 켜와샤니 세다 도토 그리스 어디서다
So that I think it pertains to stanza 77, as Geshe read from the commentary. And Vaisheshikars are coming back saying that, beings have so much habituation with the graspings, isn't it? Since beginningless time. They're very powerful, And I don't think the realization of selflessness or emptiness, right, which can knock them off, because beings have been with the grasping since beginningless time, so there's no possibility. So now Prasangika Madhmikas are responding to them. They said it's true that beings have such a long habituation with the grasping, it's very powerful with them, but still the wisdom realizing selflessness, emptiness can uproot it. The reason for that is this wisdom or the perception of selflessness is a valid perception. Whereas graspings, however powerful, there are invalid perceptions. And the invalid perceptions like that, wrong perceptions, if you really think carefully, logically, it's very easy to challenge them, because they are grasping at something that doesn't exist. So through logical analysis, you can pinpoint whatever you are grasping at, it's not there. Something not there is easy to establish the reason, isn't it? Whereas the wisdom realizing selflessness, its object exists, its existence. If something exists, you cannot deny it, right? So that's that one is a valid perception. The wisdom has so much validity backing, whereas graspings have no validity. Yes, they are very powerful because you're so used to it. But if you analyze it, the referent object, Shenyu, Tibetans say, right, what you are grasping at, it doesn't exist. When you see that it doesn't exist, then you know, like, okay, this is distorted, right? So therefore, it is possible to uproot, because those two, what we call perceptions, they have mutually exclusive insight into the same thing, isn't it? Right? The grasping grasps at something that exists intrinsically. The wisdom looks at it, it does not exist intrinsically. So those two modes of perceptions are mutually contradictory, isn't it? So that's why the wisdom can be a powerful antidote to the graspings.
Tete 강한 세마이 되는 그 해도 뉴시 교세하고 기봤다고 세대 남자에서 기사려. 세다 당시다 다음에도 해야지 그 군인 지상 개발시. 다 거의 저기 수수 자매로 쇼도서는 야대 세마 용게 되게 세마 명게 되자면 소리스 어디서 그래 가지. 지 가서 tete 강한 세마이 되는 해도 뉴시 있어. 세다 다음에도 해야 돼 야대 세마이에서 Tita he damedo here, Dangzin Telenushi, Jotori. Could you have did some of your marva? What it is, he couldn't combash that the combustion of Shawati. Shina couldn't run you devil, shadow what he had, shadow, Nicole Nushi, she told.
So Gisela read in the commentary a citation from Brahmana Vartika, a valid cognition text. So as Gisela explained, they said that when you compare and contrast, so to speak, grasping at self and the wisdom realizing selflessness, wisdom realizing selflessness is a valid, right, perception, whereas the grasping is a distorted, invalid one. So it's always the valid perception that can challenge the invalid, distorted one, right? And so it's true that sentient beings have so much habituation with grasping. It's very powerful. But if you really analyze into the whole, the referent object there, we can easily pinpoint that the graspings, referent objects do not exist at all. And then you realize that, well, I'm grasping at something that doesn't exist in the first place. Whereas selflessness, the object of the wisdom, it exists. That is the ultimate reality, isn't it? So therefore, this validity can contradict or cut through the graspings. Yeah.
What is the Karsa? The Chui Dami Drive Rigba Gevas, the Dami Chui Dami, the Kaza Dami Chui Dami, and Dino Dash. Kaza Dami the Shets of Geshe. Chida, the Kaza Dami, Shui Dami, Kaza Dami, Tourist. Or the Chida of the Kaza Rondo Pumbo to Toba Sonsa, Dami de Tola, or this or Chida, that the Kaza Dami the Shets of Geshe. That Shui Dami, Shia Dredo, Shui Dami Drive, Riva Sheva. Iba Shui Dami Riva Sheva la Sums Temba Yesha Higoni Shui Dami Sheva. The Dini Metevi Legapon Gaja Goshi, things Sheva was. What is the Saji of Teaser? Shui Dami Sheva. Dami Sheva. Give him some Cheba Yesha goodness, Cheba Yesha Zati gone in the Tamu Dodge. The year makes gone to Langapon, Langapon, the take the Langapon. Gaja Goji, dancing Sheba was Gaja go dancing the Tiara was Yora dancing Gas Yorova.
Law.
Chitty did the Zado.
I got a way along.
What he gets.
No,
Oh, did it?
So with that, we come to the next section, which is establishing selflessness of phenomena, or Dharma in Tibetan. And so we're on page 160 and stanza 78. So as Geshe explained, that in terms of the two selflessnesses, or identitylessness, that's how it's translated here. First, we deal with the selflessness of a person, or identitylessness of a person, because relatively that's easier to relate to because of the basis upon which a person is established, isn't it? And so let's say now we are done with that. So we graduated dealing with the selflessness of a person. So now we transit into establishing the selflessness of phenomena, identitylessness of phenomena. Now this is done in three different ways. The first one is, we establish selflessness of phenomena through four mindfulnesses, right? Mindfulness of the body, etc., right? That's one. The second section would be that we will refute any alleged ascription to the possibility of the non-duality of the two truths. It's possible that the two truths can be non-dual, right? That there could be arguments against it, so refuting with that. And then the third section is, we go through different types of analysis and reasoning to refute the object of negation, right? Gaksha. So the one we already saw is the reasoning of singularity and multiplicity. Then there are other analysis too, right? So under these sections, selflessness of phenomena is established or investigated.
No. 당벌 제반예샤 공주 그래서 류제반예샤 공주 소화제반예샤 공주 샘제반예샤 공주 숨 공주 슈제반예샤 공주로 시즈로 공주로스 데 당벌로 숨스 차제 류라시 왔다니 유메다니 때라 아바 딱봐 류로시 메바 때라 아바 차제 예라나라시 메바 때라 바바 류데메라 차미르바 당 류정 데메도 때바오스 모두 사지 데데리다디 사지 데 제반이야 공 디건시고 다 류제반이야 공주시다 소화 제반이야 그 샘제반이야 쉐제반이야 시공주디시 다 당벌에 차진시데 차진세는 데다 먼저 수고를 차진시 다 깜발라버레 가서 차지예요 어디 차진시하죠 어디 먼저 류세는 차진디시
차진라오
깜발라버는 차지예요
알아 차신
어디에 넣어야지
So it starts with stanza 78, and so as we said, selflessness of phenomena is investigated, established through 4 mindfulnesses, and so 4 mindfulnesses are mindfulness of the body, Lütembanyesha, and mindfulness of feelings, Sorwa Tembanyesha, mindfulness of the mind, mental consciousness, Sem Tembanyesha, and mindfulness of reality or Dharma, right, Chotembanyesha. So we start with the mindfulness of the body, and the terms we have to be a little bit aware of is we talk about, part possessor and the parts. I know in English nobody talks like that. That's not English, but anyway, now we talk like that. So this body as a whole is what we call chajen, means it is the one that possesses different parts. It's a possessor of parts, right? Whereas the arms and the legs, these are the parts of the body, right? These are the parts. So there's a relationship between, right, the possessor of the parts and the parts which are, right, possessed by it. So strange talking this English, I know. Although I'm not a native English speaker, this is not English at all. But anyway, there's no other way. All great scholars talk like this. Let's talk this way, yeah.
Lujen Demetrio, Lujensen that Meta Gonzo Metigra, Lujensen, Luden Dengedera. Luisen on the Kambala was a share. Lujensen the Mikora Shandigo.
No, son.
Demetrio, Tawani, Lun so Kamba Nilsum, Kamba Nilgu Desa, the Salmon was you. Tell Lucy Shawate, Rangi Bede. Because Rangi Lucy Shawati, Rangi Tambone. Lu Shawati, Rangi made Kede Rangi Trana, Lu Shebe, Tanya Jube, She Lu Korange, Gwenis, the Yevaziwana, Lu Daki, Kanvaso, Soso Adam, Yela, Ya Dobe, Sobadan. Tenale, Guatateva, Karushi, Karushi, Lugi, Sencher, Yigova, Tibi, tell us, give Lurabati, Ya Rene, maybe Sudan, Kambada, Shimba, give Lumibata, Lad, give out the Lu, give out Lumai, Toad Jumatan. Lumai did that, then lose the tower, services. 거기 뒤에 다 먼저 류다 샤빠고 차 유만 당수 세야지 어디 가가 당수 세는데 거기 뒤에 가가 저래서 뒤에 가가 아니 데리고 지울 나기가 류리 가서 데리 러시 저래면서 자 아니 코도 가가 메다 류라이 좀나 아니 코도 간지 이거 대시다 어디 니미도세 어디가 류코 샤시 가서 류선은 다 용서 되시 샤기에다 깜발라바 차 니마 나오서야로 샤기에를 가냐 어떻게 류 샤기에서 그러 어다 한지 샤샤지 가졌잖아요 니야요 말이지 어디서 다 류다며 유제는데.
Okay, so as Krishna read from the commentary and explained that when say body, we all know this whole thing is the body, right? And then the arms and the legs and heads and all of these are parts of the body that constitute the body. And so body does not exist intrinsically, because if it does, it should be findable among, right, the different parts of the body or in the collectivity of the different parts. And we couldn't find it. That's why we go through the list of different parts of the body to say whether we could find an intrinsic body in every one of them. And so the list would include, as is listed in 78 and so forth stanzas. So if we look at our legs or the feet, Kangpa Tibetan can be feet or leg, and the curves and the thighs and waist, these are not body. We do not find any intrinsic body in any of them. And we look at our stomach or abdomen, our back, and so neither any of these are the intrinsic body, nor our the chest and the shoulders. And all of this, as Keshala said, like if we look at every part of the body, we can look at the skin, we can skin, all the intestines, right, different organs inside the body, every one of them, to find out if there is such thing as intrinsic body, it is not findable.
Tenzin Dorjee 자기 레간제 니야메자 류다그레 말이시고라. 제가 풍부가 다 말이시. 도 파샤르자. 라바도 다이나. 류라바 카다디 라바지 직. 요 타디 직이나. 타디 데미 직레로. 그가자 타디나 제메 통신. God Pumanashi Jama Shower, she said, Tita Shawns, she dictated the chief and Lunia Mesa, Chachi says the Nia Medusha, Luda Medus, the Toban only a does and Nia Medus.
So if we use example of the lakpa, the hand, right, does it exist intrinsically, we say, and if it does, let's say hypothetically, then it has to exist intrinsically as one with, right, the body, or as different from the body. So when we analyze that way, if it exists as one with the body, then everything becomes just one thing, which is not the case. There are different parts of the body. But if it exists as something different from the body, then the hand has nothing to do with the body. They become unrelated, phenomena. So like that, when we analyze every part of the body, first we start with the rupa sagandha, aggregate of form, every collectivity, the parts, and we couldn't find. Then we move into the other aggregates and try to do the same thing.
통야 고다 강바 라바서 이게 통야 게르바 다 통야 메고 노로 야 심발로 와서 기마서 에디 마고요 디 통야 메고 그 뒤에 가가 요르바 제 저지 류베 차이레레 가제나 에디 류세 이야메자 어디 자그 여문 타디 여문 제미 군이 다 땅선제 군이 저거로 그래서 타디 있는 제미 동시 가 보면 나시제 그 류디 가서 나기레도 말 제미 동시로 다 제이나 타디 때문에 즉 지도 차차진들 체험이 저기나 근데 콜이야 루다기사다 다주 이 체험 말아 어제도 디데 리과시리 간지 직타디 제바도 디시는 제우들 ene ludi ya niya me zo di karsa luchemani ya gumya to gongurso.
So when we cultivate the mindfulness of the body and use it to analyze if there is such thing as intrinsically existent body, first we might start with all the visible parts of the body outside, isn't it? The hair and the eyebrows and the face and everything, right? Parts of the body. So when you couldn't find any one of them as illustrative example of intrinsic body, now we go inside, which is invisible to us, all the organs inside, the livers and the lungs and the heart and the spleen and the intestines and the big and the small and all of that, right? And then we couldn't find any illustrative example of that, right? Because if any of this exists intrinsically, either they have to exist as being one, identical with each other. If something's identical, then we cannot talk about part and part possessor, isn't it? They are just the same. But if something exists as different intrinsically, then they are very unrelated. If we're talking about a pillar and a vase, they have nothing to do with each other, right? Like that. So we analyze, and then nothing is findable as such,
What did Luther is a gunget and Tajan, they were taking with it. Peter was just Loma land. And then they got to bed. Lamando in that Luther is a goya, go to land, Mrs. Huda.
I'll do it again.
Yeah, Tajan, they do.
Ale.
Oh, Jetta Luther is a gunget that called Tajan attack in Hago.
Kilibachre Garagadi.
La,
Yamle by the Tower and Aqua.
Traverse.
I think Islam must have watched something on the media social. He saw somebody talking about the mindfulness of the body and the practitioners in Nepal. And so he's not only like himself a practitioner, he's teaching everybody else. He said, maybe you should watch him and maybe listen to him.
I did that.
Yeah, the Geshe watched that. He's trying to tell them, okay, I want you first to focus on this, crown of the head. Is this something, right, intrinsic self? Now go here, right? He just pinpoints. That's how he was teaching about the mindfulness of the body.
No,
so we have to stop there today, and we will welcome your questions and start with our invisible Dharma friends on the. Are there anything on the website? Okay, I'll start off with one Carlos gave me last time after the class is over. He said, I couldn't even ask you how this question, so I'll read it and translate, and hopefully the person is still hooked to the internet and you get your answer. If not, you have to ask the follow-up question, right? And Tiwa Thangpati Kien Kazan San Nima Nyama del Chik Tiwa Chik Shue Kokab Ram in the one. Or this Shu Shot Nia Kazan Nyama de Kien Shelachu Dish the Shu in Rawagin. The Quran Tiwa this is the first I'll tell Geshe and then I'll read it for you. The Gokten says you're Rawagin. Tarwa said this, Toba Yim Vina. Nga se gi da chik chona so ma ru chi yor ba ge di bet ko nga du go yor we sa ro ba ge chi de ka la nga se gi da chona de me sa nga se gen di bet ka so shi ro ba yizel pa tim chin che ro ba ge ko da ni su me ba cha de ro ba ge ji da yang she ba me ba si gi me sa ro ba ge yu ji ro yin da nga la gi da ji zin ba su shi ba ro ba di me ba chen che tham ja da ko nu chin chi da nyam da ro ba ge o din de chi li ya gok den la gi yor we sa ge
Gaden said that it was Gata, Conjun Dorjee, Nemo Gomina, and the call because Shaba did Nemo love so in and the soul child is a Shaba the own Manjua race on the Drekaya in Goden Silver, Bangbarba.
No, sir. That matter young day tops are called young day.
Young day, Chashire over it. Goden, young days, the Dodger because as you are.
Oh, did it come?
Godens, coordinated, Tom Bob Godens, Goma Godens, 제 샤쇼로와
No, so.
고데스는 거 dire 가야 그게 지금 인수다
Aldim chumas ge chenge tiwa chi ko mar tharba thobso na ske nyangde thobso na and nga se sona jero wa ge nga la be de pet ko ran me ba cha ne ro wa ko khong ga ne chue tham je nyam de chik de nub du ko ba ske this so da nyangde thobso na da da ge nga la jero wa ge
nga siza de 타니 nga de 예래로 디렉게 되 말이
me de nga se ge sona de yona da nga be na tha chum ba yin la ge ko
드려요
yo ro wa
저 예스 다저 선어 예스 다저마다 그래서 배는 뇌바다 뇌자도 축조 그래서 근데 나랑 시저서 타니 나니인데 그건 저버저요 다들 타니 렌제 대신 나도 유에 되게 들어
na ro ba
다 가자 다세 매 되게 들어
no
그니까 가가셔 거다
da nyangde thobsan di kha ga se bu chi thong de na
그래서 다 근데 다 그래서 저 가지고 지금 말해서 가지고 세송세서 차당 저게 제하면 그 야부 제주고로
na ro
그래 뭐 여는 가 미사 가 차바 이사 가지고 저 들에 제야 매월스고 말다
ale nga tha chum ba yin sam da ne nam ju nga da tang ze de de ba nga di me ba cha za da ka lo re
다니 가디에 돼요
타니 nga chang ma ru chla ro da ka lo
어디 다가 그저 나가 될 때는 거기 유모 제부터 보다 지금 그 매어 찍어야
So let me read the question first. Even that didn't help. Yeah. It seems that liberation requires and /or describes the state in which there is a complete cessation of the perception of a self, meaning a complete merging of one's mind back into everything that exists without differentiation of perceiver and object perceived. So I think liberation does not necessarily mean a cessation of all perception or awareness, but simply a cessation of a separate self. Is that correct? Would it be more accurate to say that liberation is an obliteration of all experience? In the bracket, I hope I'm not redundant in asking this. Okay, there. So now let me translate what Geshe said. Because in Tibetan, everything's so precise, technical, right? Anything you said, Geshe will check into something else. So first I tried the truth of the cessation. That didn't work, somewhere it went. So I think your question is about when we achieve liberation, nirvana, right? That's the question. Is there still a perception of self or I, isn't it? Or that perception vanishes and it becomes one with everything that exists, right? So there is no perceiver, there's no perceived differentiation, right? That's the question. Geshe says that it's not that we have lost the sense of I once we become arahat or achieve nirvana. Yeah. I'm still, as an arahat, you know I'm arahat, right? You have that conventional sense of perception of I. Okay? What has happened is that as an ordinary beings, really we find it extremely difficult to be able to differentiate, at least in our subjective mind, the conventional sense of I or the self, and then intrinsic, right, grasping at self. They somehow fuse together. And so we have hard to differentiate the two things. So now through your practice and you achieve nirvana, so that means you do not have any the kind of this ordinary grasping self that produces all kind of delusions, everything, right? But you still have this conventional sense of I, right? I'm walking, I'm eating. So now your conventional sense of I is not like creating any troubles necessarily, generating delusions, right? So it's not like you kind of, dissolve into everything that exists and there's no separate sense of I or something. You still have conventional sense of I there. So hopefully that works. I'm coming back. Anybody would you like to ask a question? No? He has the mic if you want to ask a question. Yeah. Not that I want to spotlight on you. open that door.
I deeply appreciate it. Geshe have keep teaching so far. My question is very intellectual, and may I ask Geshe explain a little bit about this question? In the Madhyamika, establish the three doors to liberation: selflessness, wishlessness, and emptiness. Based on this, based on the five analysis logics, syllogists. The first one is in Tibetan. I speak broken Tibetan, but I hope you understand. The first one is syllogists to just like Geshe have teaching recently based on the reasoning of one and many.
Yes.
In this one is in Tibetan called Jiku Baju Sanshi.
Well, that part I knew, yeah.
And the second logic is the logic called diamond logic. In Tibetan, Dorjee Gekmeng Tashik.
Yes.
And number three, the logic based on negation of one object. This is very gross translation in English. But in Tibetan, go Yome Shiku Chitan Shik.
I didn't understand that one.
Yome Shego Chitan Shik.
No, say the English one. Maybe I can remember the Tibetan. Can you say the English slowly?
This is a syllogic to analysis of the result. Analysis of the result. The number two, analysis of the cause.
Oh, analysis of the
analysis
result. Oh,
of
yes,
the
yes,
result.
yes.
Okay. And number four is syllogics about the negation of four way of arising. In Tibetan called Mujik Jeshik Sansik.
No.
It's in English. It is they use this in to analyze both sides, cause and effect.
Oh, Mushijingo, yeah. Yes, yes. Refuting production through four modes. Is that what? Right? Yeah. Okay. So now the question is.
And then number five is syllogics about dependent arising. Grand-bashing Sanskrit. This is the king of all the logics.
Right.
So my question is, my request is, could Geshe please explain a little bit further about three doors of liberation?
And what has all this to do with?
Yeah.
Oh, so you just
how
want
do
the
we
three doors?
establish?
Oh, what are the three doors of
Well,
liberation?
you need to establish three doors of liberation.
Okay, sure.
That number one, the request. Number two, the question is, if the practitioner uses five logics in analysis meditation, does that is the best way to apply to find out, to practice the object of abandonment and object of cultivate?
Okay, sure.
Okay,
Okay.
So I'm sorry,
Okay,
I don't explain my question very well.
No, okay. So let me check. I have two, right, because you said, so two questions you asked is, could Geshe explain the three doors to liberation, right? And number two is, from practice point of view, if we use these five different reason analysis, would this help us to understand the abandonment and cultivation better? Something like that, yeah. Condition the direction there's kids among us that Chiwang or March or Wagon. Thanks, I'll go one baba so that Geshe don't get confused. Namdar Kosum says or Wagon. namthar kosum number thabe kosum wage odichi kengi deshes kyono na sar wage number thabe kosum di khares wage ani tiwani bade shul shugir wage ta tiwa kanga shisa ya dom to sar wage
number thabe kosum sa this is the moto deme se jorwa
no
but deme se ten le de 다다 범바도지나 다 범바 데메 인식으로
no
범바 코는 뭐 데마 메와 될 데메 똥바 될 가래 될 넘버 가고 고 똥바 있어
no so
아니 고 녀마데 요 데마 저 뭐제 녀용요 가래서는
no so
녀마 그 데마 저 깝단 쇼로 말아
no
어떨래야 가서 쳔만 메와서
ale 규세만 메세들 wage
쳔만 메와서
규세만 메
다들 뭐뭐 봐 요거 다다도 거 데메레디 요마 데노레아요 그래서는 저리야 뭐뭐 메와서 뭐뭐도 거 데노레아요 말이지 그 데메 동동 좀 송셔도 어디서 남다 고스스거다
디 가르숨숨 베게
라
풍발 샤바지 그 토나마라고 숨숨 베
봄바사 유리 무서워서 거기 다 돈다 되시고 봄바 데메 인식으로
라우
이거 데메 가디 레베레스 라이나
라우노
이게만 레베레스 들 가르세 동바 가르데
규세만
참
메
메와서
라우
단다 거로 뭐 가르데 데메레스는
no
뭐 동바 인식으로
no
다 다다도 거 데메 뭐 데노 레드 유라여서 티 요머서 아들 가르
member
뭐뭐
jibu member mese들
어제 뭐
no so first question first right as I'll ask the next question next so this is about in Tibetan called namthar kosum literally means the three doors to liberation right and so this is to establish again emptiness or selflessness right Dharma and let's say Geshe use a particular example a vase or a pot, pumba, right? So when we look at its ultimate nature, right? The way it exists is it is empty of intrinsic existence or empty of true existence, right? That's its ultimate nature. That is called emptiness of a vase, right? Its very nature is emptiness. Okay. Now we ask the second question, right? What about in the past? Was it truly existent, intrinsically existent in the past, or some intrinsic cause, right, produced it? They said it never was, right? There was no such time in the past that, this vase itself existed intrinsically, or something intrinsically existent cause has produced it. That is called the signlessness, samameba, right? We should attach it with a cause, right? Signlessness of a cause. Then the third question we ask is, what about the future? Will it ever become truly existent somewhere, right? It shades the non-true existence nature and it can become truly existent, right, in the future? We'll never do that. So that's called the resultant. Remember, this is called the aspirationlessness, right? In terms of the outcome, there is no such thing. So these are called the three doors to liberation, right? So we look at that, okay? So that's answer question number one. Now I'll ask the second question and then we'll come back to what else. Tiwaniwa shorwage.
나
Tiwaniwa derwage. Tiwaniwa de disigodo da ko pejon ra shuishan de ksara nganzo namju Quran tendang chewen nganzo kaso da ke tendam juji rigba dama de tang yorwage. Ji du de ke tinji segen rabo doje sengme tinji segen rabo tene ke mushikyen ko ke tinji segen rabo rwage. Rigbe ke bo tende ke tinji segen rabo rwage. Quran ke deda yang da je lap songage. So ta dige di rwage. Ane ta cheba chen peje chewena ane langdor ke nelia go mamo ba yabu chegre weso da tuadi.
가데스
Ta di damanda yorwada.
어제
도저 세메 텐지 지두르게 텐지 가서 제베 텐데 텐지 nga 샤르와게 다 되게 간가 표절 체베이나 랑자다 도저 세저와 냠렌체 로와게 랑자다 도저게 내데도데 안에 가서 왔다 세버를 차그를 쓰고서 로와게
데레 다 데메 거 차야 더다 다 그거라
이게 상발로 게 데메 루베 다 로와게 제가 군서 루베 다게 말와
그저 말이
제주 강라 랑자 도저 세주 강라
뭐 단다디 된중가디 그런 동의 집에 리방가 셔고라면 디카이
알렌 동의 학업에서는 다 랑자의 토제니엘 양주 편투어 쳐버진 거로.
다 지가 동의 리바 가르고 있는 리가 다 좋은 거 세가 이거 자자저 데리데 데즈가지여서 지투지세 니까지 유명해지고 무시지고 다지고 세야지 데지 나한테 셔고라
랑 그게 진짜 레르기 고간제 때문에 차단 루트고 와 이제 정말 거야 이거 말하게
말말 내가 그 소소소 그게 서울은 제주는 강사소도 주요로 여러
강사직 상마 배주시하고 기자 말아
뭐 제가 가갖고 말다 지금 뭐고
아 소소 갈평거든요 와 just asking some clarifying questions right so those all five analytical reasonings you mentioned, right? I'm not going to repeat all the five, such as the king-like reasoning or dependent arising, or the four modes of production, or something like that, the diamond-like. Geshe says all of these reasonings are used to be able to establish selflessness or emptiness, right? Ultimate reality. Yeah? So if you understand ultimate reality, that might help you, your practice of abandonment or cultivation. But these are reasoning not used for conventional analysis, okay? And moreover, it's not that we have to use all five of them to realize, understand emptiness, selflessness. But why we have five, or we could have more than five, but these are the most prominent, right? Five examples, and depending upon individual mindset, some might need to use one of them, that works better with him or her, but every one of them is capable of establishing, not like you use one and then you use the next one, then it's not like that, okay? So hopefully that answers your question. Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah. So let's go to Latmir, yeah.
So Geshe said that both the Prasangikas, the Madhyamikas, and the Vaisheshikas accept that the doer of the action is the same as the experience of the result. Okay, but the commentary says the opposite.
Okay.
Here's what the Madhyamikas say, according to the Madhyamikas' answer to that, the problem with karma, how can karma continue. So they say that the individual imputed on the base of the aggregates of this life, who accumulates karma, and the individual imputed on the base of the aggregates of the next life, who experiences the result, are two different individuals. When in the next life the result of karmic action is experienced, the self or the individual of the former life who was the doer accumulating karma no longer exists.
Okay.
Yeah. How is on this we're both agreed. So Prasangikas and Vaisheshikas agree.
Okay,
So-
no,
so-
I think.
But the Geshe said the opposite.
No, I think he did not explain the whole verse at all, and he just said one statement. So we can go back and check definitely. He did not explain the whole verse, I remember. He read it, but he said one-liner, right? That's what I translated.
I'm
No, I
saying
mean, Geshe did not explain that whole verse, stanza you just read to me, the aggregate of this life, the next life. He read it, and he went, but he made only one-line commentary. Right? So I
Yeah,
have to get back
so
to
the
that.
comment, the statement was they both, he said that they both accept that the doer is the same as the experiencer. But here it says, no, they're definitely not the same, they're different.
Okay, what does it say there? What's the difference?
In the commentary?
Yeah, yeah.
I just read it. Okay, the individual imputed, this is what the Prasangikas say, the individual imputed on the basis of the aggregates of this life,
Yes.
who accumulates karma, and the individual imputed on the basis of the aggregates of the next life, who experiences the result, are two different individuals, not the same.
Okay.
He said they're the same. When in the next life the results of karmic action is experienced, the self or individual of the former life, who was the doer accumulated the karma, no longer exists.
Okay. Okay, now I got you very clear. So I'll go back and ask Geshe, right? If I did any wrong in the translation, or he did not say the whole completely. I remember he didn't explain the whole text. He went. I'll find a Tibetan verse so then he can explain it clear there. Koran condition did again. That again. Okay. That's the wrong one. I told you need to retire pretty soon. Up to what's the stanza number you have? Okay, 74. Oh, yes, I got 73. Yeah. There here. Game to see Korangi can't shows your wagon. Dirisha Tanda Kunden Debu Tangche Shes Wagon. Tongwa Dine Si Mines, Juji Lani Tennis Su Chebu Shazer Ten like your wagon. Or the Taki Gang, some just the Chatan Jakshe the Kumas wagon. Taki they quoted the wagon, Karsore, Tanda, Cheta Mavatan, Umatinjuba Nigalo wagon. Kora Samba Chevena, Pena Le Chebabogi, Dakasor, Pungal Dash, Kansa, your wagon. Deda, Jawa Shuman, Debu Yungen, your wagon. Young Pungo Shambaja, Kansa, your wagon. Kansa Dini, Kore, Judan, Kodachi, the Kansani, the Chipper language called wagon. Kansani, the Tade Rishal of Shas again. Wagon. So that the Kansani, the Tade Chipper.
Tade, Tade, Chipamari, Tade is Tade in the young Tade in Marda. Tade is the Doba Tade.
The Kansa Tade race and the color of the Dutch Body Lakota Cantication.
That's the Kansas that they do you get the Sange Lesaki die in that Kansas and you got Tade.
That did anything cover the Pumbani Chagomar.
Teresa way. Tade is the sheep that in Tade Shagara.
Alone.
Mujawaro. This was a Tade gave money.
Alani can that the Kansa de Casore. Let Chababo Kansa the Devenu Kansa Ni Delia, Juchila Tash, where Kansa Chipamare.
My meeting, getting the Tade Shago. Lesa Tata and Laka de Tabamo de Shamoro. Could Jodu, could Sami Mazos go. You end up the Gonzap in the bush, you Lord. Lord Jazipo, the Medi Kansa Juji Shagra.
Long.
In the court, Bush, Nega, that Tamen Nega. Given nigger Kakashan, nigger to Kakachiba is Simara.
Larua. And the Chetukan under the Karsore, let Chebabo did the Devunung Kasani Tade in any Shing Sala, Shing Sabjus and Sagamada.
What didn't that do Tade anything to that? When the sleeping, they are choosing Yungunda, Shing Sal.
Alcanza Tade rest, Juchil tum the rest.
What that usually is that? The concert Tade, the
in a Juchil type of Kansa Yamar, but the Jawak Ching part of the Kansa Yamar. Then again, lay this out, Wage. That's Sumada Jawa de la Carit Midi and Chili Wage. That Tande Tenzin Dorjee less the cheating Dorjee, the Kansaka Rella or Wage. Let the Ducarine.
Less I get called less as the young thing. So Ransaka Desha. But then you get the message you do.
In a no, okay, I'll get back to you. I said the difficulty how to translate this thing, right? I'm trying to get a clarity how to translate this best. When you Kansata there is, in the Jujibares, that Jujiba in the Kansachiba Chagmares.
Jujiba like Kansa, Jujiba Shagami, Kansa checks as it, check Tade, Chiba Shagmare.
So this is the technical difficulty here. As Geshe said, that those two persons, you're right, the person imputed on the aggregates of one who is the doer of the action, and the person imputed on the next aggregate, the experience action, these are two different, how should we say, person or individuals, but they do belong to the same mental continuum. That's how to translate, you mean, right? If that's clear enough for you, then that's enough. I'm struggling with this one, right? Yeah, yes, right. Right. Right, yeah, that's what Geshe meant. So I think that would be my I think translation problem there.
Yeah. So
thanks you for asking that.
Yeah,
right.
they're clearly not the same.
Right.
And so in this regard, I have.
Let me ask you. That's why I asked Geshe. That's my. I said if these two individuals are the same, then I was asking my question. Wouldn't what the Vaisheshikars are saying stand true? Because these two would be two different individuals, right?
Right.
But Geshe said no, because Prasangika Madhyamikas, as said, they belong to the same continuum. If they don't belong to the same continuum, then they would be like a pillar and a vase. That's what he clarified. Yeah.
Okay. In this regard, what is he said that he explained impermanence as he gave an example of a baby changing from the time it's born
until 80-year-old. Right.
Yeah, but there's a continuum.
Yes.
But this is not the definition of subtle impermanence.
Uh-huh.
That's not what it is. What is the definition of subtle impermanence?
Oh, what's the definition of impermanence? Okay.
Yeah, in general, I'm puzzled. I may be wrong about that, but it seems to me that there's a great reluctance to talk about subtle impermanence. You never hear an explanation of that.
Okay.
Why is that?
Okay, sure.
If I may be wrong, but that's my impression.
Yeah. Right. So I'll ask Geshe to define the impermanence, right? Yeah. Oh, subtle impermanence. Yeah, right. Right. That's right. Right. Sure. Right. Quran condition did that. The king page shani. Kasore. Keji yod do in a junil tar nerwage. Geshe rwage. That the pajong what and the chirabagi the gochuki mesa. Comes a midaba lamna. Then bed jigger or something or right. Just a Quran go di kago dosa. Tandango. The Geshe you are doing the midaba tamolai the rwage. So the midapa like the condition love or a quasam or rwage. When I Puguchi chain a lot of the take in a rwage. That the Geshe you will rwage. The Karela course that without tamod on that. Geshe you actually young doing the shower rwage. Or dig it cessation.
Geshe del shower, without Chamosad or del shower. Geshe.
That Geshe is another chooses in a Karsa radel might do that. There is some choose line Karsa or again.
Or a Geshe is the karma that she second that Geshe does it.
But the name of Jude the version.
That is how it is a Suzuki Longo. The method of
choose like the Guinea Tasha. Yeah, maybe this might work. Geshe says, yeah, the subtle impermanence. Like usually when we say impermanence, we meant the subtle one, right? That now if we specify subtle, we call it momentary disintegration or changes. So what that really means is that, like say, if we use the clock, right, every second, right, it changes, right, the next second. Let's say, what is it? An hour consists of 60 minutes. A minute consists of 60 seconds, right? Is that what it is? Right? Right. So when we say 1 minute, so that is a label onto the continuum of a 60 seconds, right? But every second it's undergoing, right? That's what it is, the subtle impermanence. That's the definition. Does it make sense? Yeah.
Well, this is an example, but
Yes.
I was curious about the definition, which, let's say Dharmakirti's definition,
Yeah.
which is that all causally produced phenomena perish,
Yes.
cease,
Yes.
they're destroyed, they don't change. Change implies continuity. Change, so that's my concern with that. They perish. This is what the definition is. That, you know, every moment, right?
Oh, I see.
It's a very strong.
Perish. Oh,
They
I see.
perish. They cease. Just like the objection of the Vaisheshikas. So they understood correctly in that sense.
Oh, the perish. I see. Yeah.
That no, they don't change because change implies that there is something that continues. Something changes, but something of that thing continues.
Right.
So
Perish
it's
means
not.
it just.
Yes,
right,
perish.
right,
That's
right.
the definition, isn't it?
Isn't that definition what?
This is the definition of subtle impermanence, isn't it?
Oh, subtle the perish you mean?
Yeah, the perish. Yeah.
Right. I don't know whether that's the English, right? The translation of the same concept. That's one word in Sanskrit. I wonder, is that probably right? Yeah. Issue we have. Let me see if I can make that sense to Geshe in the sense. Tanda again, chira mabagirwa, chira mabsa. Read chira mabra. Tagi ke Quran zo again, sunda chebena midavas lava yena, bed Quran mabachil again. Labrwage. The next code was Rawage. Kiji, you do a change of Kugu Yamarson Rawage. Korangi, that injured China, Konan Chevena, Dina Jordan, the Gasge, Yelbo Rabbish code Wage. Yedo I Chamarbe, Yeldre, Rawage. Chedan, Pena Yedu get Slavi, Korang, somebody get Midaba, Kiji, you do when I could delay Jewish near to the Shumatu Yungu Rawage. That's a Yel Chimber Slavi in Rawage. And the DNA Karsa without Tamu present Chago, 6 years.
But yes, and never chow cigar. Kissing Jesus, never chow your George was my do. But the magic Bukusu, ya gay look, go cover is a cook Bukusu, never chow your mara.
So I think, I don't know whether it's the Tibetan word, right? The parish. For the Tibetan word that I'd use is something like vanish. Does that come the same meaning, right? So for him, vanish means it become non-existent. That's what Geshe is hearing, right? So then that would not be the correct understanding of subtle impermanence. Perish would be like, vanish, non-existence. Huh?
Following their appearance. Because there is no for them to disappear,
No.
to stop existing in that sense. There is no other cause. You know,
Right,
it's
that's
not.
not a-
There's no. The only cause for their disappearance is their appearance.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that they immediately disappear, and the next moment they appear. Because this is the only cause for their appearance,
Oh, right,
for their disappearance. The
Right.
disappearance doesn't have any. The change doesn't. Let's call it change. Doesn't have any cause. It's not like cosmic radiation or mRNA vaccine
So
or
you would
anything that
agree that
damages.
perish means become non-existent. That's what you agree to, right? Vanish.
Yeah, vanish. Yeah, perish.
Yeah. So
It
that-
stops. It's so
That's
a
right.
new entity of the same kind
Right.
reappears,
Right.
but that is stopped.
Right.
This is it.
Right.
It's done.
That's right. So that's why they asserted self is permanent, because they couldn't have the self vanish, because it becomes non-existent.
That's right.
That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
Whereas the Prasangikas are saying, right, it changes, but it exists continuously, right, for whatever they're doing.
No. They're saying the Prasangikas agree with actually with my understanding is that Chandrakirti agrees with the notion of momentary impermanence.
Yes. Prasanga accept that, yes.
Momentary impermanence.
Right, momentary.
they
The self is a momentary changes, but the continuity is meant. That's what Prasanga would say, right? Yeah.
Well, the point is that it perishes. That's my.
Right.
It perishes in the next moment.
Yeah, whatever perish, yeah,
Okay.
it's right. Because the Quran did something was against us. This session was again. Pena manzo kiji jurwage. Kiji tangbo di the juru the gane kiji yiba the shagurwage. That deal ya tanda karsong the year was kiji tangbo the yes haro the map charo again. Jigorwa kiji tangbo the map chalo kiji ni na. Kiji tangbo the map chane kiji yiba the shawing gorwa. In kiji tangbo the ko map chawa the yiba the ya that color. Right. I think, I don't know whether this helps, so I was checking with Geshe, right? Let's say we'll posit the momentary changes, right? The first moment arises, then it vanishes, sort of thing, right? You sees it, but it transmutes into the second moment. So in the second moment, the first moment is vanished. It's no more there, according to Prasangikas. Now the second moment, it transmutes in. That's how the continuity is maintained. Yeah, hopefully that, yeah. Thank you. Right, I think so. I think reductionists don't talk about transmutation. Right, that's what they should. Yes. Could you use the mic? We have people on the. Oh, sure. Whoever, yeah. I'm not managing it. Okay, so don't look at my phone. I'm just listening. Whoever's next. Yeah.
I just needed clarification about the doer and the other person, the recipient of what he did. So if there are two individuals who one does something very bad to the other, and the karma doesn't take place in this lifetime, so then are there two separate consciousnesses that are continuing into future lives, and then the karmic connection that they have, is that another continuum as well?
Okay, I think I've got a part of your question.
I'm not explaining it very well.
So you say, okay, two people, right, let's do, right, one person does something bad to, let's say, bad to another person,
Yeah,
and this dies, his consciousness will continue next, right?
yeah, that's one individual.
So what are you talking about, the other person?
And then the other person dies, and so that's a separate consciousness.
Right, his consciousness will go to?
Too, and then the karma will ripen in a future time.
Right, on the one
those.
who did his action, yeah.
So is that also considered a continuum which embraces the two of them?
Is there one continuum that will embrace two of the consciousnesses somewhere? Oh,
Yeah.
let me see. Are you thinking like they will become one person at some point of time? Is that what it is?
No.
Then?
No, they're not considered a continuum of two people. Is that right? It's just two individuals that continue in.
Well, two different individuals, two different mental continuums, right? Based upon that, there will be two different individuals, right? Yeah.
Is this related to what we talked about so far? Kind of.
Yeah. Okay.
and that
Is that clear enough to you or not?
Yeah, and then there's a karmic connection because of what happened, what one did to the other one.
Right. Is that karmic connection still going to maintain between the two? Okay. Korang this something you said again. Kangsa ni jirwage. Ta chiki chiki ne jebe chasha rwage. Ta kuni ga shib rwage. Ta ne jengen digi leche sabra kore ki ta gyun robudi jawa shungma digi dibudi nyang rwage. Gyun chi roda dwa. Ta ne jesa mi di shibra kore gyun je ne rwage. Judo kal jawa shungma li gyun ni roda rwa. Gyun ni parula di leg dawa shasa di ni parula yang korani dawa cha de ma resu jawa shungma li ya ta. Gyunyi por same gyunyi por dawar shine yore yomar sugusar gen.
Kharjawa di gyunsiguru.
O ma jewa dila gen ta danda ne ge rwa ge. Ne ge gen da ne ge san ni de rwa ge. Shi sona ni ga lo ge same gyun ro de rwa. Ta jewa shuma de ya kunyi ni same gyun ta de le ge kunyi de sha ba jewa shuma kunyi ni same ge gyunyi de pa ji le ge dawar chagmena.
Ale ne da da ছেদের কোই জি 야가 시행사 누구도 시행 드레스
되게 대화를
누구도 저시마 용구를 쓰고
kunyi por dawar stegen mena da ko tuwa chegen de nyangko de nyangko wage kunyi paru ge dawar ya leg dawar motin dogo ina
ko le khora sa khesa de reso ko da le de to rangja kha kha da ko dezu to kharti wende di ke shogo ro
ma de ke shogo de kara ni ge paru de la dawar de motin ni ge
ma ko da 그러니 더뭐 양어 등을 좀 내 가서 저와 중요로 봐. 어디 저와디에서 저와디 리부데 고 바지저 양께 해서 고디 리부니 저.
어디로. 이 리부민 리부데 냥고로 와게. 이네다 코라니 버롤이야 딱디 가서 셰버 주인이 그 버롤을 레그 대월 스탠다 대대 그래 되게 말 가요.
아, this 다 가지고 내 셰버 쉬면서 디 저와 내 해서 죽자 고 Okay,
I'll stop there. I think Geshe-la's not getting the question message. Okay, yeah. Okay, what Geshe-la said is right. I tried 3 times, so that maybe that question didn't work in Tibetan well. The true continuum will continue. The whenever who did the action, right, will experience the result on the basis of that continue in the next life. Is there going to be any kind of karmic connection between the two? Geshe-la's not getting that question from me at all, so I'm sorry. There's no answer to that. Are you the next one? Yeah. No. Okay, sure. Okay. Thank you. All right, so they did the way. Yeah. Oh, so we are up to time. Okay. So again, I just to share this here again. The cousin of the Doga Kiala Shas, again, someone talk again. The Pala Chungu about Sawang Tabala Kazan Konsu Shabne Chaka do the Wage, or the Tenzin Yiba, Tenzin Yiba, Tunda Yiba Chad, they came to Snarron again. Did that under the Carso were on the President Gabjo Ching, Trozo Timishure, Meg Governors and they promote the Nazatuza, the Tong the Wa, or they mean Morley Meg Governors again. They came to Snarona. Then later, Robert Mora, and Nazatuza, not the Sharwakan, the deal the try the Yomarwa. So I have some prayer requests. A local Tibetan by the name of Tsong Takpa, he spent all his life teaching Tibetan dance and all of that, and he passed away recently, and I think it was 90 or something. So this is his 2nd week, so please pray for him, and also that Representative James McGovern of Massachusetts, his daughter Molly McGovern passed away due to cancer, and so please pray for her too and others we can think of. Then I have a personal request for a prayer from one of my colleagues who has health issues dealing with, and so please pray for her and others too. So we will start off with the Avalokiteshvara prayer for the deceased, and then we will do the medicine Buddha for the healing. Okay. Sadong Kolun Gyuven Gyabo Dong Jendong Gyaba Sangbu Sangye Dong Kangla Kangdu Dela Dedung Zumba Jenre Shanze Lo Omani Peme Hum Omani Peme Hum Omani Peme Hum Omani Peme Omani Peme Omani Beme Hori Gawa Di Nyododa Chere Sewan Rubjonen Dowa Chiyang Te Sanla Gumbar Show Medicine Buddha Toje Gunla Nyombe Jomden De Zenzang Tebe Nyendu Dunga Doso Neze Sangye Mindu Yeye Shartse Lo Deta Om Begaze Ma Begaze Ranza Samoga De So Deda Om Begaze Ma Begaze Ranza Samoga De So Ha Gawa Di Nyoda Da Membe Gabon Dobjo Ne Dowa Chija Malu De Sala Gaba Show page 3 of this booklet. Lord Jiazhu Yudong Bega Den Gyaltsen Pongwei Judong Menba Xin Tenba Zinla Wangdo Jichu Zhangnian Chogun Chola Showan De page 5. Ma Wang Dame Gunjian Dongwa De Kangre Zhongso Ninda Senze Jamgun Jiawa Niba Yapse Ji Zhangsuan Dinzi Mawe Shiba Tenzin Dorjee Yingguan Zebe Ji Xie Nigun Changzhou Dendu Longdo Tangzhe Bebe Beiyuan Ji Duzha Jiazhu Gundo Shabden Tuesan Guangda Zezhe Zongbe Ji Yongzhou Yure Tubu Longre Dejin Nubu Beden Ba Tubden Kangri Dabo Shabden Dona Kongmen Zeba Namda Gun Tenzan Dorjee Pende Zhongbe Lundo Jumin Chebe Tinle Ji Gyaltsen Dorjee Lundo Shabden Chizhe Lamen Tuje Melanda Gyaltsen Dorjee Chozun Dodo Jidong Dongba Yi Jida Membe Lungu Lundo Sho page 9. Rangja Xinge Gongbo Zeba Men Zodo Namje Geyun Dema Chozo Zeye Lazo Tamje Ji Dade Mingxi Choge Wodo Tubden Jidang Losan Yawa Yi Shiro Denbang Zinbe Bei Tangde Dorjee Yongui Xinye Jo Yangde Ningje Wongbo Sowa Jiden Sungwe Chana Beme Jo Denbe Azawa Soso Tawa Namda Sudin Yangda Lam Losan Yenden Bedo Shabden Shu Tuzhong Gyaltsen Nonzin Yangbe Xin Samzho Namzhe Sangzin Zhombe Gomzhong Xela Songzho Jebe De Tenbe Ngada Chebe Donglan Kowa Bozho De Zhombe Chara Nizu Zhombe Denden Leshe Tangzha Zu Kizhu Xinyin Chenpo Shabden Shu Kebe Langdo Goshe Zeda Ji Zhombe Chara Nizo Rangs Sangbe Leje Rigo Yishe No Sumden Xinyin Chenpo Shabden Tesan Zhulan Zhobe Dende Ji Menzhong Dazhe Sangmen Labzhong Denden Dende Beshabe Tenden Xinyin Chenpo Shabden Shozhong Jiawa Seje Jinla Dang Tuden Damjen Songmen Sona Daza Lasan Dabe Dembe Chedam Lundo Sho Changzhou Simzhou Rinpoche Maje Bana Jeju Ji Gewa Nyamba Meba Gone Gongdo Pewa Sho Dongni Dawa Rinpoche Maje Bana Jeju Gewa Nyamba Meba Gone Gong Pewa Sho Sa Xi Be Xin Zhu Xi Me Do Zhang Rin Ra Ling Xi Nin De Yanba De Sangye Xin Do Me De Lugun Nanda Jin La Je Ba Sho Kari Rawe Gorwe Xingang So Pendan Dewa Ma Lu Zhongwe Jere Ziwa Tenzin Gyaltsen Chabe Sidian Bado, Denjo Je, Yedang, Guru Ranamen, Niyanda Ya Min, Yawa Gundo, Yanda Lama Dan, Deme Chöji Bela, Longje, Sada Namje, Yunden Razu, Doje Changi Goba Nyu Dojo.